You ever wonder why most modern alliances are defensive rather than offensive? It is a simple question, but it does make you wonder. If no one wants to be seen as the aggressor, why bother with all of this? Why not just go to war? From NATO to the North Korean Russian alliance, there's a theory that can help us view this international posturing from a lens that isn't really discussed enough, but is very consequential to modern international relations. I chose to research and present a topic on defensive realism. Defensive realism is a theory that agrees with the core principles of realism, but instead of pursuing aggressive and expansionist policies, a state decides to maximize security and survival through defensive means. Now, what difference is there between these two competing sects of realism, or what differentiates defensive realism from other schools of thought? Well, defensive realism holds a few axioms that will help clarify. The first is that, in agreement with realist school of thought, the world is indeed an anarchy. No one system binds or arbitrates the world order. Under defensive realism, this, alongside security and state survival, still persist as primary assumptions and goals of the state. Because states are uncertain and paranoid of the activity of others, states are presumed to act with rationality and caution. Instead of preemptive attacks or wars, states maintain their offensive capabilities and reserve them for only when defensive capabilities do not allow for a state to survive or remain secure. Think of a big yellow warning sign. Economic, diplomatic, and defensive alliances are meant to restrain states from going to war against one another. Defensive realism is almost like a form of an umbrella theory that explains a lot of others, such as the balance of power and security dilemma theories, and it does explain why, although states commit a lot of talk regarding threats of war, they rarely follow up on it, even if it seems common. Now, excellent examples of defensive realism in the non-security realm can extend to the economic sector. For instance, China seeks to maintain its security and survival in the current world system by becoming an economic giant. Foreign policies such as mass manufacturing and the Belt and Road Initiative dissuade states from acting aggressively against an economic behemoth like China. Everyone loves money, everyone loves investment and clothes. So why would a state go against the maker of these things? India, on the other hand, secures its survival through a very different policy. Instead of becoming one with the world economy, India chooses to be protectionist. Under defensive realism, India's security interests are maximized by enacting economic measures that do not compromise or become interdependent with the world while increasing domestic economic potential. For instance, Indian tariffs on Chinese goods void China of a competitive advantage against India in domestic Indian markets. The United States also acts in similar methods, such as the USA's regulations on Chinese cars or Europe's regulations on American exports in certain technologies, such as that of Apple. Defensive realism offers a lot of advantages. For one, it is grounded in empirical and historical facts, which is that everyone generally prefers to avoid aggressive expansion, making this framework practical, and it also explains why states take a while to actually respond or legislate the right to go to war against other states. States would rather restrain themselves and fall short of a direct conflict, which also streamlines the reasoning for doctrines such as the nuclear MAD doctrine. Because of this, power projection is oftentimes a lot more predictable because it tends to stick to soft power. And because of all of this, an emphasis on stability is shared between all states, opting to not risk the survival and security of states. Why would Hungary want to go to war against the rest of Europe when it can just maintain its security by having an alliance or partnerships with Europe? Additionally, because states will withhold offensive capabilities such as in the cyber and traditional realms, they'll defend securities as well. Deterrence becomes optimal and preferable to simple acts of aggression, which usually isolate and exhaust state resources more than it otherwise would have. It's not really a successful endeavor. However, defensive realism does comes with its flaws. For one, there is an overemphasis on security apparatus of states, which does not necessarily account for complete state behavior. This blends in with the second flaw, which is that states can and will act irrationally. States with an ideological focus exist, or non state actors exist, and it contributes to the lack of accounting for complete state behavior on behalf of defensive realism, as well as the lack of accounting for non state actors. Real world decision making can also misinterpret the security dynamics of the world, and as such provide a faulty or, again, misunderstood threat analysis, which can force states with misconceptions to prefer aggression as the sole method of state security. Russia and its invasion of Ukraine is an excellent instance of this. Why would a state risk such amounts of destruction in every sector to go to war? Speaking of nuance, there's only so much that, I can capture in a format like this. So there's some questions I still do not either possess the answers to, or some more for you to, chew on. To what extent can defensive realism account for non-security related areas, such as ideological or economic competition? Is defensive realism a foundation of a theory unto itself, or is it a framework from which other theories can use to specify certain international relations activity? How does an emphasis on restraint limit the potential for other states to seek influence, if at all? And lastly, how does a preference for stability influence a state's decision-making process? I do hope I have some answers to these questions, and I do hope you all have a very nice day.